Hi everyone, welcome to Wool and Spinning. My name is Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and thank you so much for those who are joining us in the live chat. I've got something in my throat. Getting the kids out in the morning is quite the challenge because James is on the soccer field within 45 minutes. So Mike peeled out of here with the kids. We got everything done. I got them all settled and out of here. So thank you so much for joining us. And I inhaled a banana, which obviously went down the wrong way. Anyhow, I think it's fixed now. My name is Rachel. Welcome to this place. This is episode, I think it's 172. If you are a new viewer to the show, thank you so much for checking out this podcast. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for continuing to watch week after week. If you would be so kind to hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. And to Patreons and patrons of the show, thank you so much for your continued support. It's the reason why we can do what we do and be here in this place each week. So you are welcome, and thank you so much for watching. We have a lot going on in the community. If you are new to wool and spinning and you are not sort of familiar with all the things that go on here, please have a look at the show notes. I have linked them down below, and they are available at wellforpearls.com or at patreon.com/wellforpearls. So we had book club yesterday. I unfortunately missed it. I had an appointment and I couldn't get home in time. So I ended up, the kids asked for borscht last night, and I make a vegan borscht that they really, really like. And it's just really simple. It's basically traditional borscht, but without the meat. And so I had to go to the grocery store to get beets. It's like, of all the things, they love it. And that's what they asked for. So there you go. I have quite a lot to share with you that are like new projects, new cast-ons. I've been working up a storm with stuff. I finished a toque over the weekend and I totally forgot to grab it and bring it over. So when the credits are running, I will peel over there and go and grab it. And yeah, so we've got lots going on. It's really good to see everybody in the chat. We've got Maggie and Rebecca and Carol and Mars and Dana, Greta, Kim, Pam, Martha, Sonia, Kelly, Jenny, Leah. Eve is in the chat. I don't know how long she'll be sticking around for, but whisper, whisper, it's her birthday. So if everybody could wish Eve a happy birthday, because she's one of our very active community members, and I'm happy and proud to call her a friend. Welcome to Becca, Christy. It's so good to see you guys. Hi, Sarah, and our other Sarah, Kaylee. What are you guys working on? I want to know. I know Kelly's in the middle of a big move, and some people it's the afternoon because of where they're coming from in the world. It has been cold and rainy here. I've been wearing sweaters every day, and it's been lovely. I love this time of year because it's jeans, hand spun, hand knit socks, long sleeve t-shirts and sweaters, and you don't have to necessarily wear a jacket. Although this week it has been pouring with rain. We had a thunder and lightning storm, which is really unusual for us here. And yeah, we even lost some power for a few minutes. Oh, thank you, Diane, for the compliment on my hair. It's absolutely a disaster. I have to get it cut, and my hairdresser is in the middle of a move, which is good because she's actually moving closer to me. So I might even be able to walk to her house now, but I'm like waiting for her to set up her hair studio basically. Oh, Christy's working on her breed and color study. I saw somebody else was doing breed and color study as well. I'm not sure who that was. Oh, Maggie's knitting hers. So I'm excited to see what you guys are doing with that. We're going to talk about breed and color study later in the show. So let's get into the show. I will run and grab my toque, and we'll get into all things hand knitting and hand spinning. So I got over to the bench where I had been, where I had all of our stuff organized, and I looked at the bench and I was like, oh no, where's the toque? It's gone. And then I realized I'd put it away. So not helpful at all. And James forgot his soccer toque and mitts, which is really too bad because it was put away. Shoot. Eve didn't ask me this past week, but she has asked me in the past and I had remembered. So I thought that I would share. I had knit the Alaska toque, which is a How I Spin that's up and coming later this month. It's going to be released for everybody, so I'll be sort of sharing those links with you later in the month. And she asked me a couple of weeks ago if I'd worn it yet, because as the weather was getting cooler, she wanted to know if I had worn it. Anyways, I hadn't worn it yet because it hadn't gotten cold enough. But when we were camping this past weekend for Canadian Thanksgiving, I wore it. It was very cold. It was toque weather. We had all of our winter stuff out. And we didn't have to wear our winter jackets, which was really, really nice. We were in toques and heavy sweaters, and Mike and I both have some, like they're sort of Patagonia style outdoor jackets that aren't rain jackets, but they're for warmth. And we were wearing those. We were wearing mitts. We had our winter boots with us. It was like real winter, so very like shoulder season camping for those who are familiar with the Pacific Northwest and know what it can be like at this time of year. It was very much shoulder season. And it was funny because when we pulled into the campground on Thursday, half the campground is closed right now because it's the off season, it's the shoulder season. And we were driving through the campground. We've been there quite a number of times. It's 4 hours north from us. And we were pulling through the campground, and Mike and I both said to each other, you know, these are like a different type of camper, a different type, like these people are like a different group from who we normally see in the summer. It was a lot of people who were there because they were hunting, lots of like camper and truck style with a boat behind to go out fishing. People with like the gear, if you know what I mean, like all the stuff. And it was just really lovely. So Canadian Thanksgiving was this past weekend. It was also Spin Together, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. But it was interesting how you know, people were gathering without gathering. So it was like the baby boomer parents, the adult children in my age group, sort of elder millennials and young Gen X, and then their kids. And so they had like, you know, three, 4, 5 sites, depending on how many adult children there were. And then on Sunday afternoon, they put up, like, it wasn't just like 1 or 2 sites that was doing this. It was like the entire park. Like we were the exception, that we were on our own. They set up, you know, folding tables. People were doing barbecued turkey and roasted potatoes and stuff on multiple hibachis and barbecues and stuff. And they were gathering, you know, physically apart, but socially together. And it was really, really beautiful. The lady next to us, they were the parents of 3 adult children with their spouses and their kids. And she was telling us that it was the first time that their entire family had been together since February and since Christmas of last year. And so she was very tearful on Sunday. And as she was setting everything up, she had tea lights and lanterns, and it was lovely. So so Francis is wondering what shoulder season means. So shoulder season is what a lot of people who do a lot of camping refer to as the fall and the spring. So it's after the fall isn't very summery anymore, and you're kind of getting into winter, but you're not quite at the frost yet. So we actually had snow on the highway coming home. And we didn't have a frost where we were, but there was frost around us and in the mountains around us. So the shoulder season is kind of like when it's not quite freezing yet, but you're getting there, and you're certainly out of the summer happy weather. A lot more rain, a lot more snow, a lot colder at night. You've got, you know, a lot of people run their heaters at night. We've got a little space heater that we use, that we run in the evening to take the chill off, and then we turn it off. And we have up to minus 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. Sleeping bags for the kids. So yeah. All right, so let's get into the show, because that's enough like kind of housekeeping stuff. I have been working on so much, and I would like to share all of it with you. So let's do that. I can't remember which tab I need to turn it to. Nope, that's not it. Where is my, there it is. Okay, so I have been spinning. So let me just see what order I put this all in. So I did this last night, and let's talk about my Karma spin to start with. So I'll let you guys look at my spinning while this is running. So I have been spinning this on my Lendrum Saxony. And this is Karma from West Coast Color, and I divided these 3 braids up. So they're not really braids, because from Lynn, West Coast Color, she's located in Tappan, British Columbia, which is actually where we were about 20 minutes from Tappan this past weekend. This is a 50-50 Merino yak blend, and it is just absolutely heavenly. And I had bought 3 of these 50-gram little bundles from her back at, I guess it was Fibers West when Rebecca was here, this past Fibers West, when everything was canceled. And so I divided it all up and I put it into little bundles like this. So I stripped it all down, made all of these little nests. And before I've been spinning each of them, I've actually been going through, I'll show you with this one, I've been going through and just very, very, very gently pre-drafting, not too much, because the staple length of the Merino and the staple length of the yak is incredibly short. So if you look at my drafting hands in the video as it plays, you will see how close my hands are together. And it's just like this little teeny tiny pull back smooth, pull back smooth. And I was airing out my stash this past weekend because actually, to be totally honest, I was looking for something and I still can't find it. But I know it's somewhere, I just have to look harder. And so I was airing out my stash, and I've done the first bobbin, but of course I couldn't take my Saxony camping with us. And as I was airing out my stash, I found these. So these are the same blend, but 3 more. I have no idea how I ended up ordering these 3 from Lynn and how I ended up forgetting about them. I actually feel really quite embarrassed about it, just from the standpoint of, like, you know, this is quite a bit of fiber. It's worth a certain amount of money, and I completely forgot about it. Like, I feel kind of a bit like bashful, like it's very luxurious of me. So I actually have 6 of these in total. And because of the way that Lynn pours the dye onto her fiber, I will open one of these up so that I can show you. Because she pours the dye onto the fiber, and there isn't like a colorway per se, it's really easy. And we've talked about this on the show before. It's really easy to combine her different fibers together and colorways together, because they aren't really colorways per se. And what's really nice about that is that we've talked about this on the show before, like I said, but when you combine fiber from one dyer, whether it be yarn or fiber, or you combine yarn with hand spun that you've spun from their fiber, because they use a certain palette of dyes and they stick with those dyes, you know, it might be, one specific set or brand of natural dyes, or it might be one specific set or brand of acid dyes. Or if it's plant-based fibers, it might be one specific brand and set of Procyon dyes. And then within that dye palette, they might have, you know, a dozen or half a dozen dyes that they use as their dye stock. And then from there, they mix their colors. And because they stick within that sort of, I always think of it as like an eggshell. I know that's sort of a silly way of thinking of it, but I think of it as like a little eggshell of like, this is the base colors that dyer uses. And then from there, to create all of the other colors that they have in their palette, they're all from that dye, that stock, those base colors. So when you combine colors from one dyer, you often get the same colors or the same hue or the same kind of, I think of it as like a theme. So the lime green on one yarn is going to be their same lime green on their fiber is going to be the same lime green that comes up on that other yarn base. So, and then all you have, the differences between the color and how they come up is going to be the underlying base color of the fiber or the yarn itself. You know, was it a mixed, you know, naturally colored fleece? So that's the case with this, because the yak adds, it's kind of like working with mixed BFL or oatmeal BFL, if you guys have seen that. Let me find a lighter area of the fiber that I can show you. You see how there's that sort of streaking in there, that lovely kind of brown coloring in there? That's the yak. So the color has taken and shows up on the merino, but then the yak, you have that gorgeous brown of the natural shade. And because Lynn kind of pours the dye over top, you can see how in the braid, when you strip it down, and you know, you wind it up into these little, wherever my little nest went, I think I put it away. When you wind them up into these little nests, if you combine all of that together, of course, the finished object, like the finished yarn in this case, it all looks very homogeneous. So what I am going to do is I am actually going to change how I was going to spin this, which I know I always say, don't do that. But what I am going to do is I had divided all of this up to spin 3 bobbins. So I've already spun 1 bobbin. I've got the 2nd bobbin here, and I have the 3rd bobbin in my bag. So I am going to continue to go along and do that. And then those 3 bobbins, I'm going to wind off onto storage bobbins and label and put aside. And then I am going to do the exact same thing all over again with these 3. So this will be bobbin number 1, bobbin number 2, bobbin number 3. And then I am going to create 3 2-ply yarns. So each 2-ply will have 1 single from this batch of fiber, and the other one will have a single from the other batch. And basically that'll blend up the colors because they're all close enough. And I will have 3 skeins of 2-ply yarn. I'll have quite a lot of yardage. It'll be lace weight. And I will either do a woven stole or I will do a knitted something. So we'll see. I don't know what I'll do. But I am loving the spinning. I am loving doing it on my Lendrum. I'm just doing a lace weight singles. It's about 42 wraps per inch. The first bobbin went really, really slow, and a lot of it was trying to figure out how far back to draft, how far to hold my fingers apart, getting used to that yak in there. We talked about this spin quite a lot, not last week, but the week before, and about how it's really spinning like yak, and I've got to keep my fingers really super close together. So that 50-50 combination of the camelid with the wool goes to the background, and it's very much spinning like yak. So I'm really enjoying it. I could spin it as I could have done it long draw, to be honest, and I could have done it over the fold, but I decided not to. So I'm enjoying it. My Cormo fleece I have left over there, and so I probably won't speak to it too much, but my pin drafted Cormo, I had talked about last week that I had sort of started spinning it. And I'm spinning it very fine in the end. So I had done a bulky 3-ply sample or 2-ply sample just to kind of see how it would spin up. And I didn't love the finished sample. I felt like it was quite inconsistent. I felt like it was it wouldn't withstand any kind of pilling or wear and tear or any kind of rubbing, or it just didn't feel, I didn't feel like the yarn would be very useful for very much of anything, and I was really concerned about the durability. Cormo is a very fine wool, and it's a combination of Corriedale and Merino, if my memory serves. I was just talking about Cormo the other day, and Elizabeth of Kingdom Fleece and Fiber Works, she had processed this for me into pin drafted roving. And because the fibers are so fine, it almost kind of comes up as like comb top kind of, even though it's roving. And in roving, you've got really jumbled up fibers, and they're not all aligned in parallel. But because the Cormo is so fine, it actually is quite aligned and quite lovely to just do a continuous backward. Again, my hands are quite close together and I'm smoothing as I go. and it's just naturally spinning up a very fine singles, about 36-ish wraps per inch. And so the finished yarn, the 3-ply, if I do a 3-ply, the finished yarn would be about 18 wraps per inch. But the thing is that Cormo blooms and it really fills in all that space and fills in, you know, and just there's that sproing factor. And so I was sort of thinking, well, if I spin up a little bit more onto this bobbin, I might actually pull off this bobbin and chain ply it so that I have a fairly significant amount of yardage, probably about, you know, somewhere between 40 and 60 yards. And I'm going to do some sampling because I have an entire pound of this fleece. I can do something quite substantial with it. And if I can, you know, the chain plied 3-ply won't act exactly the same way as a traditional 3-ply would, but it'll give me a really good idea. And then I could carry around, you know, a knitted swatch like this. I could carry it around in my pocket for a couple of weeks and just sort of see what it does and how it roughs up and how it wears. So that's the Cormo, and I'm really hoping this week I can get some video. We have a very busy few weeks coming up with my work schedule. So, but I am hoping to get some downtime and record a little bit of me actually spinning it so that I can show you what the Cormo is like to spin, because it's just this bright white, and it's kind of addictive to spin actually, because it's just this white, you know, kind of springy fiber going through your hand. And it's just, actually, I have to admit, it's really lovely to spin. So I'm just looking at the chat to catch up. You guys are chit-chatting with each other. Oh, I didn't know that, Kaylee. -40 is the same in Fahrenheit and Celsius. Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know. Oh, you're welcome, Francis, for answering that question earlier. So let's go back to, I think this was it. Nope. There we go. Let's talk about my Cumbria. So I finished my Cumbria imitation yarn, and I have decided that I am going to actually spin some more of this. So it ended up being a little bit thicker than I had hoped. My knitted swatch, which is actually right here. Did I show you guys this already? These are all of the swatches that I have knit during COVID. Did I show this to you? These are all of the swatches that I have done over the last 7-9 months. From my pullovers that I'm working on, my shore cardigan, I haven't started it yet, but my Florence tank, which I talked about, my Tunic cardigan, which we'll talk about later, my Shetland, my Albini, which is behind me here, which we'll talk about, my CVM mohair for my love note, which we'll just very, very briefly talk about. This is my Cumbria. So the Cumbria yarn was really, really interesting. It came up very much like a long wool yarn. It was very much, you know, I think in some ways I get really used to, I don't know if this is your experience either. Yeah, shower curtain rings. It was a hack from Katrina. If you go to the dollar store, you can get these shower curtain rings, and they are perfect for storing swatches. And I just clip them on one of the corners. And the other thing that they are brilliant for keeping is little samples of dyed yarn or skeins of yarn, like little mini skeins. And if you take your tags and you put the shower curtain through the hole there, the curtain rod, if you put that through there and hang that on the curtain rod, on the shower curtain, and then you have all of your little skeins hanging off, it is an awesome way to store mini skeins and samples, especially if you are preparing for a lecture and you need to grab stuff really quickly, or a workshop, or you're teaching, or you just want to keep your stuff for further reference for down the road. Awesome way to keep things organized. So I have so many swatches here, it's just crazy. I said to Mike the other day, because I was working on another swatch, this one here, which we'll talk about later. I said to him, I feel like my way of coping with stress this year has just been like knitting swatches. Just knit all the swatches with all the yarn. But that might also be why I have worked with so many of my yarns this year, is because I have been knitting all of these swatches, and it just inspires you to keep going and to make with your yarns. So the Cumbria swatch is photographed here. And one of the things about this yarn that really struck me as I made it was, and I spun this like completely in default mode because I wanted to see what it would act like. So this is a BFL Massam mohair blend. So it's 60% BFL, 30% Massam, and then 10% mohair. And I blended it all up on my drum carder. And the finished swatch is very, very drapey, and it really feels like a long wool. It's got that drape and that sheen and that texture of the halo, of a long wool. I'm not sure this would be really great for cables, but I think it would be really great for texture, because if you look here on the side there where I do my purl stitches so that I know what size of needles, look at how it stands up. You can even see it in the photo. It just really stands up, and there's really good texture. I think this would be a really great yarn for a sweater like Gentle Morning, which I've obviously already made. I'm very tempted to make another one. I love that sweater so much. And the yarn knit up really, really beautifully on, I think it was 4, so US size, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, US size 8 and US size 7 needles. So what is that? 5 and 5.5 millimeter needles? I'm not exactly sure. I would like to see how this yarn knits up with a 1 size smaller. I think I was a little bit too high on the needle sizing. I think I could probably go down a little bit just because the fabric is a little bit open, although this would be perfect for a shawl. This slightly more open fabric. So like a DK weight shawl knit on like 5 millimeter needles, that would be absolutely perfect. So thus far I have spun 588 yards for 200 grams of fiber. And if I could double that and spin another 200 grams and double my yardage up to whatever that is, 1100 and something, it would be perfect for some sort of a sweater. I was kind of looking at a couple of the sweaters that are in my queue, but I haven't decided on a specific garment yet. And I think sometimes with these yarns, it's almost better to wait until you have all of the yardage and you know kind of what you might, if you need to spin a little bit more. I might spin a little bit more and then I could do a slightly bigger garment. So we'll see. Yeah. The purl bumps are my needle size for gauge. That's right, Jenny. So what I do, I used to do it differently. I'll maybe show you with we can talk about my CVM spin next. So let's move the cameras around and I will share with you that. And then I can tell you how I do my swatches to move all my things out of the way. Let me go to, I think it's this one. Yes. So, oh, and the camera's frozen. Let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. It freezes after, like if I don't use the DSLR for a few minutes and I'm chatting with you guys, it freezes. So I have to, you know, kind of wake it back up again. So the way that I do my swatches, I used to do them differently. I used to do them with purl stitches and yarn overs, and I tried to, you know, a purl stitch was worth this much and a yarn over was worth this much, and I used to try to include in the swatch sort of all of that so that I knew if it was a 4 millimeter needle or a 4.5 millimeter needle or a 3.75, and I just found it was way too confusing. And I would go back to the swatch later and I'd be like, I have no idea what I've done here. So what I started doing is doing the purl bumps are the US sizing because it's just easier. And the majority of my swatches I knit are between 3 millimeter and 5 millimeters. Like that's kind of the range of needles that I use. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. And I use 3.5, 3.75, and 4 millimeters almost exclusively. And so I sort of thought, so that's how I do it. So this is, this first part of this swatch is 4mm needles, or US size 5. And then the next set is 4.5mm needles, US size 7, US size 6. And then the next is 5mm needles, US size 7. Let me just turn that off. That's annoying. So it's not perfect, obviously, because, you know, it's the best way is to actually write it down and to have it on a little tag. And I buy these at the dollar store as well, and I get, I think it's like 50 in a pack for like $2. It's not really $1, but that's okay. I'm willing to pay for it. And I keep all of the information on here. So this is actually the swatch that I knit after Spin Together last week. Yeah, I agree, Diane. One size smaller would be better for the sweater on that Cumbria yarn. I think if I downsized the needles and just had a slightly more structurally stable yarn or fabric, I think it would work really well. So this yarn is my Spin Together yarn. I did not get anywhere near the yardage that I was hoping to spin. Oh, that's our Instant Pot. Sorry if you can hear that. I'm making burgers after our streams today. So I wanted to get I don't have any beans cooked right now. So there's black turtle beans in the Instant Pot. So I spun these 2 skeins of CVM pin drafted roving, again, done by our friend Liz. And these were the fleeces, the CVM fleece from Gagnon, who was somebody who was trying to get rid of fleeces out of her barn before she was moving. And these are both 3-ply. This is 194 yards and this is 170 yards. My grist for this yarn ended up being, I have it written actually in my projects, 1,268, oh no, yards per pound. In Ravelry, it's coming up as meters per kilo because I didn't change the units. So I had this little bitty here, which I knit the swatch from, and then I had these two skeins spun up. And like I said, they're 3-ply. I did them long draw on my Lundrum Saxony in double drive. And then this little bitty of a skein was about 66 yards of 3-ply yarn. So then I ended up doing the knitted swatch just to see how the fabric would knit up before I continued spinning and spun like another X number of yards. Had this big sweater spin and then went to swatch it and was like, oh, I really don't like that, because I was really torn with this yarn about whether to do it as a 2-ply or a 3-ply. Because if I do it as a 2-ply, it's got a very soft, very wool, like it's woolen. I think it would pill a little bit more easily. I'm not sure that it would wear quite as well. I think this over time will sort of felt and the surface of it will become worn. I think it would be really easy if I just move this up here so you guys can really see it. I think if you really like roughed up the edge of the outside of this, I think you could really get a fuzz and get this to sort of really appear quite worn quite quickly with a lot of wear, especially under the arms and under the you know, where your arms rub on the torso of the body of the sweater. So I think knitting this on a slightly tighter, slightly thicker fabric, a firmer fabric, I mean, is going to be key. But I am going to continue to spin this and spin enough to have some sort of a sweater quantity. I've been looking at spinning and knitting for Oshima, which is a pattern. It's very, very old school Jared Flood. I think the pattern was published in like 2016, maybe earlier. It's been in my queue for absolutely forever, 2013. And it's something that I've wanted to knit for a while. I put the link to the sweater in the show notes. So very beautiful tawny brown. I am going to save some of this and I am going to 2-ply it and set it aside for a project that I am starting to save natural shades for to knit. I would like to do a colorwork sweater so the entire sweater color work, in 4 or 5, I'm not sure how many yet, but 4 or 5 different natural shades of fleece. So I am going to spin enough for the sweater, and then the remainder of the fleece I'm going to spin to do a 2-ply so that I'll have a sport weight yarn, because this is kind of more of like a heavy DK light worsted. And then I'll have enough sport weight yarn for my color work sweater that I'm kind of saving natural colored fibers for. So that's kind of like a background thing that I've kind of got in the back of my mind for long term as I spin these natural colors. Because actually the other fleece, that takes us into my other skein that I finished for Spin Together. This was the other one that I was able to do. I needed another skein of my Shetland spin for my Albini, which is behind me. And this is my 3-ply Shetland. I was able to spin 296 yards. This is 93 grams. And for my Albini cardigan, which is a pattern by Orlane Sucche, and we've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, I ran out of yarn again because I've been spinning and knitting and spinning and knitting. And so this little bitty here, I needed 3-ply, again, spinning it long draw. So what I did was I took my e-spinner with us camping, and I spun up enough, like I measured out the remaining amount of fiber that I needed for this sweater. I need about, okay, so this is grist. Let's talk about grist for just a minute. So I weighed the sweater when I had run out of the most recent skein of yarn that I ran out of. I weighed the sweater, and the total weight in the sweater to date was 120 grams. And I had about 388 yards of yarn based on my grist in the sweater. So to finish off the sweater, which includes the pockets and the collar and the sleeves, I need a total of, including the 388 yards, I need a total of 608 yards of yarn. Is that right? I've written it all down, and now I'm like, was that right? Because how did I figure out? Regardless, I needed to spin another 150-ish, 160-ish grams of fiber. And so I spun up 93 of that total fiber to get the more yardage. So this I will start knitting with. I'll work on the sleeves and get those done. I'll spin the rest of the fiber hopefully in the next week or two, get that all plied up into a 3-ply, and that Bob's your uncle, I will be done. So I don't like doing sweaters this way. Spin, knit, spin, knit, spin, knit. It's not my favorite. I would rather just continue knitting, knowing that I have all of the yarn for the project. But this was one of those things I've talked about on the podcast before, where I cast it on in a moment of not having anything else to work on. And I'll put it on the big screen so that we can talk about this for a minute. So this is where I am at with this thus far. I'll just move over a little bit so you guys can see. So Albini by Orlane Sucche is a top-down raglan, and you cast on up here, and then you build out the neck. And so as you build out the neck, when you get to a certain point, then you start working straight for the remainder of the cardigan. And then you get to I added some length through the torso. There is some side shaping, and then you separate for your pockets and cast on a certain number of stitches, knit down, and then you work this gorgeous braid at the bottom all the way along. It goes all the way around to the back. And then you switch to smaller needles for your ribbing at the bottom. And as you can see, it's this broken rib at the back, which is actually the reason why I wanted to knit this. The only reason why I wanted to knit this sweater was to do this down here, which kind of makes me laugh because now it's over. But you do your 1/2 of your 1x1 rib cast off, and then the other half of your rib and cast off. And then you go back, and I had enough yarn from my skein to do the button bands. So I've got the button band on both sides done, which actually when I was doing them, I didn't like them very much. I was like kind of wondering about pulling them out and doing a seamed button band. But now that they're on, I'm actually really, really quite happy with them. So this takes 7 buttons. So I probably will have to buy buttons for this sweater. I don't have 7 buttons that suit the sweater in my stash. And based on my swatch, this will relax quite a bit. And these are on holders to do the pockets. And then I just have to seam that up and Bob's your uncle. All done. Done like dinner. So very, very, very happy with it. Oh, Kelly, my ultimate goal is to get grist comparable to yours. I just can't do it. One day, Kelly, you know what? I think a lot of it is part of the, I did spin the rest of it on my e-spinner, Diane. So I did all of the rest of the singles on my e-spinner. I don't smooth my yarns. So when I'm showing like my continuous backward, as my hand is smoothing back, I'm not squeezing. There's no compacting of the fibers. And because I spin quite fine, which is why I do a lot of 3-ply yarn, because I have to bulk it up somehow, which is good and bad because I end up with yarns that I really want to work with that are sort of in the sport weight range. It's the easiest on my wrist for knitting. The garments that I want to knit are mostly on 3.5, 3.25, 3.75 millimeter needles. So that works, but it's a lot of spinning. It's a lot of knitting, which we will talk about in a minute with my Poet sweater. So it's good and it's bad. You know, spinning thicker yarns, getting a bigger gauge, with a slightly lower grist is not a bad thing. They're warm, they're durable. You know, you can get a really nice twist angle and get a really beautiful garment. Like even with my Gentle Morning that we were talking about a few minutes ago, I find it really hard to get that heavy DK that you need for that pattern. So yeah, definitely keep working on it, Kelly. So, what did I want to share with you guys next? So I shared my Spin Together yarns. Let's talk about Varma. So this yarn is from my stash. It's West Coast Color from eons ago. And I bought this at Fibers West one of the first years that I ever went. And I had never taken the time to figure out, and I've knit this into several different garments, and every single time I have pulled it out. So this is it here. It's this gray blue with hits of darker blue in the yarn. And I had never taken the time. I had knit quite a few things and ripped them out every single time, but I had never taken the time to actually figure out what the yardage was, like what I actually had for yardage, because Lynn had written on the weight, but she hadn't written on the yardage. So it turns out that it's an entire pound of yarn. It's a 2-ply BFL that she dyed up that was a one-off skein. And so I checked this is the little knit swatch that I knit this past week, because I'd never done a swatch with this yarn, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And I'm obsessed with this yarn. I love it. I've had it in my stash for absolutely forever. And I've been kind of, you know, feeling the push in terms of wanting to work on a lot of different things and feeling a bit like I can't really settle on anything. And so I decided to cast on for Sari Norland. I'm obsessed with her patterns. Her and Orlane Sucche, I'm absolutely obsessed with. I started her Varma in the unicolor. There's 2 different versions of this sweater. I have linked the pattern in the show notes. It's got these lovely knit through the back loops with purl stitches, and it's I made quite a few modifications. So that's it there, and so I'm knitting it in the round instead of seaming it. And the body of the sweater is reverse stockinette, and I'm actually knitting it instead. I'm doing a knitted body instead of the reverse stockinette. There is no way that for an entire pullover that I can do purl stitch all the way around every single row. There's no way. It'll never get done. It'll hurt my hand too much. So I modified it and did it as stockinette, and then the panel at the front of the sweater. So the panel goes up the front of the sweater. It's a round neck and it's got short sleeves, which is really cute. So I have enough yarn for more than enough of the sweater. This is a 2-ply, it's a BFL, it's got a lovely sheen to it. I'm just working from all of the little bits and pieces that I have cut over the years from trying and knitting other sweaters and not being successful. I got gauge for this sweater on 3.5 millimeter needles. And my row gauge is a little bit off, but that's okay because I just have to measure. There's no shaping, although I might add some shaping. And I've just been working on it really slowly. So commercial yarn, but stashed yarn. My goal right now, I'm not sure if I had told you guys, my goal right now is to have something on the needles that's from old stash. Something on the needles that's new that I'm excited about, which in this case is my, where did I put it? My Tunic cardigan, my Tunic vest cardigan, and then something in hand spun. So I've kind of got like this overarching sort of, you know, where I've got like several things that I'm working on. I'm a very monogamous knitter. And I have just been really enjoying the variety recently and having a few different things to work on, because when I'm at tutoring in the evening, like this past Thursday, I have to wait. I'm there for almost 2 hours waiting for the kids, which is totally fine. Nora and I went for a little bit of a walk and then it got a bit too cold. So we came back to the car, and I don't necessarily want to work on something that takes a lot of bandwidth at 8 o'clock at night necessarily, but it's 2 hours. So having a couple of things that I can choose from has been really, really great and really positive. So Poet, I made progress. I separated for the sleeves. That's really good to know also, Jennifer. So Sari has a YouTube channel where she shares all of her new patterns. I didn't know that. And I think she is just something special. So I love her patterns. I love the sizing. I like the ease. I like her style. There's a couple of her pattern photographs. Varma is one of them. I want to steal her pants and they look awesome on her. Just the way that things are styled and the way that it looks. And I just, yeah, I think she's just something special. So, Poet, I was stuck about 3 inches, 2 inches maybe in the middle of the yoke. I just, you know, the bandwidth needed to knit this pattern. I was feeling it. I'll be totally honest. I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to knit this sweater. It takes a lot. It was like this, like I had to like, you know, twist my brain around to get this, to get this sort of going, if you will. Anyways, I've since these photos were taken, I've actually knit almost 2 inches down on the body. Now, I'm actually another 2 inches down from where this photo is. So I'm actually below the bra line. And I finally figured out what was going to work for me and how I could kind of get this going, because lace is not hard. You just need to look at the chart the whole time. So it sort of takes some mental gymnastics. And this yarn is Swan's Island from Deep Stash. So it's sort of part of my wishes right now to sort of have a project on the needles that's old stash. And it's a little bit more complicated than Varma. So I've been working on it when I feel really good and I feel really like, wanting to work on something that takes a bit of mind bending. And this weekend I got the yoke separated. So once Spin Together was over, I put everything away. So Saturday morning at 12 noon, I put all of my spinning away. I decided that for the rest of the weekend, I was just going to be present with the kids and with Mike. Wasn't going to do anything else. And I was just going to knit if I had a chance. So I got the yoke done. So I separated for the yoke, put the stitches on scrap yarn, and started on the body. So the funny thing about lace is that, because lace doesn't look great when you're knitting it, a couple of my friends were asking me about it, and they were like looking at it and they were like, oh, that's nice. And I was like, just wait till you see it finished. It'll be beautiful. Because of course, all of this will bloom, right? This will have a lot of positive ease. So I'm knitting I think it's the second size from the smallest, so that I have quite a bit of positive ease and I can wear it as a t-shirt. And I am going to basically knit until I'm going to do this when I run out of yarn for this, for on the body. I've got another skein, obviously. I'll knit until this runs out, and then I'll go back and do the sleeves until the length that I want, and then I can go back and finish off the body to the length that I want. So, and now it's easy because I'm just doing the chart repeat. So it's just like the little box repeat, and you're just working your way up, and then you start again and work your way up. So it's way, way easier where I'm at now. The colorway for this is organic merino, and it's in goldenrod, and I think this yarn has actually been discontinued. So this was from Deep Stash from a number of years ago. I want to say like 6 or 7 years ago. And it is their Swans Island does that eco superwash. I'm not totally sure they do that other processing, and that this yarn is a part of that. So yeah, I'm finding it a hard time to find a good yellow gold as a pasty redhead. Oh, Jenny, I feel you. You know, I really try to stick with because this is my favorite color. I really try to, because normally I'm like, you know, and especially in the winter, like I'm very pale. So probably the same as you. I really try to stick with the grellos, sort of that ochre yellow that's kind of dirty, that has a slightly green tint to it. You'll be able to wear that. It's a perfect color. And the nice thing is very few people can wear that color well, and you can rock it. So try that. I've given up on the idea that I'll ever be a monogamous knitter. I like having the variety. Yeah, you know, it's funny because I have traditionally been a monogamous knitter, and I'm finding that I'm more and more not, you know, yeah, just casting on lots of different things. Oh, the Poet, Francis, the Poet is a sweater. The Poet sweater is by Sari Norland. So actually I should link it in the show notes for you guys to have a look at, because it is a complicated sweater, but it's not difficult. It just takes some kind of working through. You just have to be patient. So let's talk about my Opus, because I'm looking at the time, and as always, we are a little bit over time. My Tunic cardigan, really quickly, I haven't made major progress on it. I haven't worked on it a ton. I did work on it a little bit when we were driving, but I have to admit I was working on my Poet, and unfortunately with this, I'm actually halfway through a row. I finally got smart and I got a row counter, and so that I know which row I'm on. So I've made my way through another repeat, and this is the Tunic cardigan by Joan Forgione. I'm not sure how to say her name, but it was out of the 25-year anniversary issue of Vogue Knitting, and I'm doing this in Juniper Moon Farms Patagonia Organic Merino in sand and smoked. So smoked is the dark gray, and then the sand color is the lighter color, and it's mosaic knitting. So slipping stitches to create the patterning, and I'm loving this. I just haven't had a chance to work on it. So I find, again, I have to be very present. I need the pattern in front of me. I have to keep track of the rows that I'm on. I can't just go into autopilot. So unfortunately, it's kind of another mind bender. This is a new cast on, because, you know, I needed more projects. This is the Gagnon shawl by Brenda Brayfield, I think is her name. How do you say her last name? Glenda, who's in the chat today. Hi, Glenda. The Gagnon shawl, I'll link it in the show notes. She is local to me and Glenda, and I really needed something that I could knit on autopilot last night when I was chatting, when we did a girls' night last night. And I've been stashing these yarns for such a long time. This is my 2-ply Shetland. So I had my 3-ply Shetland, and then I did my 2-ply that I had originally spun up. And I'm going to put this with on the round BFL that I spun years ago. So this is a 2-color shawl. and I'm just going to work on it in the background. So I just started that because I just needed some autopilot knitting and I didn't have anything. So, you know, the things that we do because, you know, we need to work on something. We're so funny. I know you guys would do the same thing. I knit a poet a couple of years ago and thought the pattern was really well written. Absolutely, Greta. It is so well written and it's so clear. And you know, because you're following a chart, it's the same with the Varma, the pullover Varma. You know, you just have to be really like, you have to follow the chart. It's like my Tunic cardigan, like you've got to follow the chart. So, you know, you can't go onto autopilot and just knit, which is part of how I've sort of traditionally been able to get so much done, is because a lot of the stuff that I knit, like this behind me, it's just stockinette. So you're not looking at a pattern or referencing a chart. It definitely slows you down. My Opus Spicatum is done, and I washed and blocked it while we were away, and I shouldn't have because it was so cold it didn't dry, but it did finally dry. I turned on the space heater and just like blasted it at it for a couple of hours one afternoon just to get it dry. I stretched it over an 8-inch dinner plate, which are the size of dinner plates that we have in our trailer. So it was perfect. And this is actually the reason why I love this pattern. It's the crown decreases. Aren't those incredible? Let me see if I can turn it a little bit. Aren't those amazing? And so this is vintage, again, yarn from my stash. I haven't reskeined them yet, but this is West Yorkshire Spinners Eyre Valley in their in their DK, which I held double because I needed an Aran weight for this toque. I've done this toque before. And then this was West Coast Color, 2-ply BFL silk that I had done years and years ago. Loved every second of this. I made absolutely no modifications. The yarn this time around, because I've knit this is the third time knitting this. This was what the yarn was originally spun for, was these little toddler mitts that I made for James years and years and years ago. I can't actually remember. I know they're in my stash. Let me see what year I made those. 2016. So not that long ago, 4 years ago. The other two versions of this that I had made it was a little bit finer yarn, so not the heavy Aran that this is. And I think that the knitting on the other two versions was a little bit smoother. This definitely feels thick. If it's very warm, which is awesome, but it definitely feels thick. It's a little bit bigger because of course the stitches take up a little bit more space. Whereas with my other two, I had done them in worsted weight yarns on the called for needles. And it was just a little bit, the toque was a little bit smaller both times around. So this is a little bit bigger, but I think it came out really beautifully. I wore it a lot on the Sunday and Monday because it was really cool by the end of the weekend. And I love how the hand spun just comes through absolutely perfectly with the toque. And I found another toque that I had made a couple of years ago out of a fractal spin, which we've talked about on the podcast before. This is the tuck stitch toque. It was a test knit that I did. And I pulled it out because I keep all of our stuff sort of stored and ready to go for as the seasons change. And I never put the pom-pom on that I bought for it last year. So I pulled it out and I put the pom aside and I'll attach the pom. But it struck me at how similar these two toques kind of ended up being. Like the colors are quite similar. So my rain jacket is this color actually. So it's nice that it goes with both of these toques. So my rain jacket is this color, a little bit darker. And then my winter parka jacket coat thing is like a black gray, a really, really dark black gray. Let me just check chat really quickly. I'll repeat my question from earlier. Have you ever had durability issues with light grist yarn? Do you have any light grist sweaters that have worn really well over time? Great question, Rebecca. Thank you for asking it again because I did miss it from before. So, you know, it's funny. No, I haven't had durability issues, and I have basically all of my sweaters have worn really super well. The caveat being that I'm not hard on my sweaters at all. And some of the sweaters that I have worn and worn and worn and worn and have really used and worn like exclusively, like I've really worn them. A lot of them have been in commercial yarn. So like Cascade 220, Cascade Ecological, West Yorkshire Spinners, Ire Valley. And so some of the recent sweaters that I have made, especially this year, that have been in hand spun, that are some of these lighter grist. So like my Gentle Morning, my Shore Cardigan, because I've been wearing both of them a lot. So far, they're wearing beautifully. And I think the real test will be this sweater. And I was wearing my stone crop the other day. I am going to get some yarn from Katrina to fix the neckline and to add a little bit of length to it. And again, like, you know, it's a combination of commercial yarn and hand spun. So far, I haven't had any issues, but I will keep you posted for sure. For sure. All right, let's go into community participation. So, here we go. Our tin can knits along that we're working on at the moment in our community is just an opportunity to work on some projects together and get some stuff knit up. So my love note is not finished. I'm not sure about it. I'm really on the fence about whether or not I'm going to pull it out and do something else with the yarn and maybe knit a love note out of something else. I'm just really torn. But if you are knitting anything by Tin Can Knits at the moment, please check out our Tin Can Knits along and just use the hashtag Tin Can Knits along, and then on Instagram or and there's a thread on Ravelry for those who are on Ravelry. This is Tessa's project. So she's joining in with a love note in commercial yarn, some tuku paired with a luxurious mohair silk from Stranded Dye Works. The tiny strand of mohair silk adds such a difference, makes such a difference to the softness of the not scratchy but not soft tuku wool. I can't believe how fast it's knitting up. It's absolutely beautiful. I love this color, Tessa. It's going to look amazing on you. Gorgeous, gorgeous work. Dana was sharing her love note as well. I feel like love note is kind of the project aujourd'hui that everybody's working on. So this is actually, she's working on a love note too, but and also in commercial yarn. You don't need to use hand spun to participate in this tin can knits along. It's just an opportunity to work together throughout this fall and winter season as we're sort of making garments and getting ready for the winter. She dyed the fingering yarn years ago, so she's really happy to be using it. She's at the split for the armholes now, although the pic doesn't show that yet. So she's still in the lace here, but it's beautiful and she's just gorgeous color, Dana. It's going to look amazing on you. Yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous. She's on, Tessa is onto the sleeves, so she can't wait to wear it. That's awesome. And then finally, Glenda finished a pair of fingerless mitts. So I wanted to be able to knit and spin outside when the weather turns colder. So I made some fingerless mitts. They are Honeycomb by Tin Can Knits. Beautiful, Glenda. I love the color. We also have some a giveaway going on in the community for October. We always do. Tell us about your spinning plans for the rest of the year. What are you looking forward to learning, exploring, and making? So you can comment here on YouTube and I will take those comments into account when I do the random number generator, or you can participate on Ravelry in the episode thread, and I have linked that in the live chat, and it's also linked down below. Breed and color studies. This is Dana again. I had in mind how I wanted to spin the bat, but couldn't figure out how to split it until she watched my Rachel's first video. What I wanted was the dark pink to be in the center and the mirror of the other colors. So she wanted the colors to mirror each other and then the dark pink to be in the middle. She was able to achieve that in the finished yarn. She spun it as a 2-ply, splitting the bat in half first. I haven't spun many bats and found this fiber a bit tricky at first, much different than spinning from the undyed braid of Charolais. and she spun supported long draw, and it got more comfortable and went quickly. She wouldn't say it's her favorite spin or her favorite fiber, but it was good for getting her out of her comfort zone with a witch's hand combed top. That's her comfort zone. So her plan is to knit a garter stripe shawl, maybe the Calera, which I will link in the show notes in the live chat here so that you guys can have a look at it. Really beautiful spinning, Dana. Even though it's not your comfort zone to spin the charolais and to spin from the bat, you did a beautiful job, and the yarn is just gorgeous. So, and then the undyed braid of charolais that she's going to put with it, I think it's just going to be a really beautiful combination. I think it's really, really well done. Gorgeous spinning. So I wanted to share with you some knitting that Tracy has done. So this is hand spun knitting, our hand spun knitting thread in Ravelry, that we come and we share all of our garments and projects and whatnot that we've been working on out of our hand spun. So Tracy shares her goal this year was to use up those accumulating hand spun single skeins. I think that's all of our goal. Absolutely, Tracy. So far this year, she's made 3 sweaters incorporating hand spun, silver lining, the Laurel jumper, and the shifty. So this is the silver lining. And then the next one is with the cream. This is Laurel. And then finally, the gray one is the shifty. Beautiful, beautiful work. Tracy, I'm really happy to be able to feature your work. I love your shifty. I think you did a beautiful job. And I love that you used the gray and then put in the hand spun with it rather than trying to spin for the whole sweater and probably not getting it done. And this colorwork yoke for silver lining, just absolutely beautiful. Really, really nicely done. Love this. So thank you everybody for sharing. I really appreciate your participation and sharing all of your projects and all of your things. Yeah, beautiful sweater, says Jennifer. Tracy, love them all, says Greta. Stunning, says Maggie. Thanks, you guys. I think that's so lovely to be able to lift up others and share what others are working on. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. In November and December in the How I Spin content, which is linked below, we will be exploring blends, luxury blends. We're going to be looking at a couple of yarns that I've talked about on the podcast that we've worked through, that I've worked through over the last number of months. And that will take us into the new year, where we will be in the community sort of looking at luxury fibers for at least a couple of months, probably a few months, if not maybe a bit longer, and looking at sort of, what are luxury fibers? What are they not? What do we use them for? How can we spin them? And we will kick off the new year in January looking at silks. So I've been working on some stuff behind the scenes, spinning up a whole bunch of silk samples that I had, and from a workshop that I took with my friend Kim McKenna, and then also some other silk blends that I had sort of amassed and collected in my stash and never gotten to the actual spinning of. So we will be looking at that in the new year, because 51 yarns will be finished and will be done. The monthly teaching content that's part of the Patreon sort of subscription will shift from the 51 yarns focus to a specific aspect of that overarching theme each month. So the teaching content will sort of look at a specific aspect of the month's theme. The Thoughtful Spinner will go into more detail about the month's theme and sort of look at some of the different things to think about when spinning. And then How I Spin will be the actual projects that I'm working on in the background. So everything will tie together, and we'll just focus on a different aspect of what we're learning about for that month. So January we'll start that off and kick that off. And if you guys have any questions about all of that, or you have questions about Patreon, please just reach out. You can email me, rachel@wellforpearls.com, or you can just comment here on YouTube or comment on Patreon. You don't have to be a patron to comment and to interact there. Or on the blog. There's lots of places to get me. You can message me on Ravelry @wellforpearls, and you can message me on Instagram. Oh, thank you, Pam. The other thing is the Woolen Spinning Radio this month, because of Spin Together that many of us were participating in. Leah was our team captain for the Team Sweet Georgia this year, and I actually had a chance to sit down and have a conversation with her over Zoom, and so she is actually our guest this month on Woolen Spinning Radio. So if you're a patron of Woolen Spinning, even just for $1 a month, you have access to the audio podcast. It's a monthly podcast, sometimes bi-monthly, sometimes there's a second episode, depending on how things are going. Me and Leah sat down and chatted this month. So for very minimal, you get access to the live streams every week and Woolen Spinning Radio. So I hope that you find something there that you enjoy and that speaks to you, that's something that you want to participate in. All are welcome. So please come on over and check us out. Thank you so much for participating today in the live chat. I feel like I didn't look at the live chat quite as much as I normally do. I feel like the show just went by in an instant. It just went in an absolute blur. I find the weekly live stream is just so fast. I want it to be more like 2 hours, but I feel like that would be so much time. You guys would be bored of me after 2 hours, but it's so much fun to do the live stream every week, and I just want to thank you guys so much for being here and for spending the time. And I hope you guys get, my hope is that this time is a time during the week when you set it aside to do something for yourself. I kind of see it as like an opportunity for you guys to sit down for, about an hour, give or take, it's usually more than an hour, let's be honest, to spend this time working on something that you want to work on, that maybe you haven't had a chance to do all week, or maybe you've only had snippets, and now you've got this little chunk of time once a week that you get to come and be a little bit selfish with your time. I guess some of us might call that self-care. I'm not really sure. I feel like that phrase is so overused, it's lost its meaning. But it's a time each week that you get to come and sit down and be with people who love what you love and are passionate about what you're passionate about, and that you can just sort of sit and knit and spin, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, and enjoy that time. So I hope that is what this place is for you. Yeah, I look forward to this every Saturday. Oh, I'm so glad, Dana. Thank you. Leave us wanting more, says Rebecca. Yeah, totally. Have a wonderful week, you guys. Have a really great rest of your weekend. Queries and Explorations meets after this, so we will be meeting in about 15 minutes. I will get the Zoom link up and the meeting room up and running now for you guys, and I will pop in and join you in about 15 minutes. So if you guys want to go on over there and get that all working, I will have that up and running in just a couple minutes. To everybody else, thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you for being here. I hope that you had a good morning, and I will chat with you this time next weekend. Bye, everyone.